Totally. And today, actually, we're having a little bit of a, one of those topics that a lot of people actually try to avoid with their pets, like making those difficult choices. And I'm not trying to avoid. What I'm trying to say is I know a few people that are not choosing to have pets because of those choices. They're saying, oh, I would rather not have a pet than have to deal with them dying again, or have to deal with, that I'm getting sick, or have to deal with any of that hardship, because it breaks my heart. And I hear this all the time, it breaks my heart to go through these things. And it's so interesting to me because, it doesn't have to break one's heart. And I know it sometimes can be very difficult, but it doesn't have to be like that. And the funny thing is, the people that are not choosing to have a pet because of those reasons are usually the ones where the pets would love to be. So, you're basically not allowing an animal to contribute to you because you are worried about those choices that you have to make. So, yeah,
Mm.
so Viv, what do you like? I know we all have some tools that we can use here, but what's your take on this?
Yeah, I mean, look, we know that a lot of the things that stick us, quote unquote, with animals are our emotions, are our feelings, and our thoughts that we create. And, this kind of evolves the relationship. And that's where a lot of this stuff can get very challenging for people to make a decision, say, to put a pet down. It's the family pet. And at what point do you actually make the choice to put the animal to sleep, to put it out of its misery, or whatever terminology people use? And there's so much around even the languaging that we use, putting an animal to death, or putting an animal to sleep, or ending its life. It's like there's so many topics that are loaded, or conversations particularly that are loaded around, for instance, just ending an animal's life, whereby when you've got the ability to talk to the animal, or have a communion and a connection with this animal, and say, hey, are you done? Is your body done? Are you ready to leave this body and maybe, have a lot more space in your life? Or would you like to choose another body? So this is a topic that can really blow people's minds, because if they've been stuck in this box of it's terrible, wrong, and awful, and all I can do is grieve for my animal, and I'm never going to have another animal again, to get them out of that point of view, to even entertain the fact that, look, death and dying is just part of life. It doesn't have to be this awful, horrible experience that people think that they have to experience. It can be so totally different. It can be a celebration of the animal's life. It can be, an absolute sense of gratitude to allow that body to allow the animal to leave its body with a sense of gratitude and thanks for being such a great horse, or such a great dog, or whatever it is, and actually celebrate the fact that you've had time with this animal. You've had an intimate connection and relationship with this animal, rather than all of your energy just focusing on this one point in their life, how we cut off the rest of the enjoyment that we've had. So, and I find when people do make that choice of, that's it, I'm never having another animal again, it's too hard, when they die, it's like, well, would you say that about a friend, or a grandma, or a family member? It's like, that's it, I'm never having another friend again because they die. And that's just to highlight what you were saying, Susie. We cut off from the gift of what the animal may desire to be for us. So, yeah.
Yeah. And I am aware that we have, like, access consciousness has a lot of tools that can really give you more ease with the transition of an animal, by really taking away all of the points of views that you might have about death and dying that aren't even yours. How many of the points of views that you've taken on about all of this is really what you have learned from people around you, that you have basically been copying. um, and it's not even really truly what you know about this, because in nature, dying is not a catastrophe. It is part of living, like Viv is saying, and the animals don't really see it the way that we do. To them, it's not this massive, horrible thing that is the end all. It's different, and for us to really fathom that is a bit difficult because we're not taught that way. We are taught that death is the most horrible thing that there is. So to change that is one step, and then to also allow yourself to know that sometimes it may not be the super easiest thing, the choices that you make, and sometimes you make choices that you might regret later, and you might go, oh, I wish I hadn't done it that way. But that's the part where actually, and this can be with any situation, not just when it comes to death. It could also be like maybe at some point you had to give an animal away because your life circumstances had changed and you realized like this isn't working. Um, and maybe you did it in a way that now you're regretting. Well, if any of that ever happened to you, I really want to encourage you to get in touch with this animal now, really in spirit. This is not about trying to find the animal again. It may be dead anyway, and or it is dead and you want to just connect with it. But can you now just allow yourself to connect to the spirit of this animal? And instead of coming to conclusion of like, hey, they hate what I did, or they will never forgive me, or this was the most horrible thing that I've done to them, if you could let go of all of that and just be present with that spirit and ask some questions. Hey, how are you? And just to connect and just to kind of get that sense of like, oh, hi, how are you? Oh, okay, cool. So how was this for you? And really just asking them, how was this for you? And they might give you a completely different sense of it than what you have been carrying with you forever. And that to me is also a lot of times a gift that we can give ourselves, for those moments where we were like, you know what? I wish I'd done this in a different way. So, and I know a lot of us walk around with that.
Yeah, and we can carry that for years and years and years. You could have even been a child and watched your mum and dad go through a difficult time making a choice. It could have been having an operation for an animal, having a limb removed, giving a pet away, or choosing to end an animal's life. And if you've grown up with that as a child, then you take that on. Like you say, Susie, you don't even question it. So, and I'm not saying, I'm not being irreverent and flippant about an animal dying by any means. It's just, but there is, like you're saying, there is such an honoring way of yourself and an honoring way of the animal that can be a different journey. And this is why I love the tools of Access Consciousness, because they help you, they facilitate you through maybe a stuck point of view that you might be carrying 10, 15, 20, 30 years later. And it doesn't have to be that way. What we're saying is you have a different choice available. And a lot of the information that Susie and I share and the Talk to the Animals facilitators share is it opens up a whole new universe and a whole new world for you to actually have this interaction and a very different way of being with the animal kingdom that actually creates like I say, a more honoring space, a more honoring relationship between you. It doesn't have to be cloaked in all of these myths or covered with all of these points of view that, like you say, Susie, they may not even be yours, but you're living with them as they are yours, and know that the animal is perceiving everything that you're going through. If they're getting ready to transition and you're having a really, really hard time with that, if you're really, don't I feel terrible, I'm grieving, I'm sad, it's like animals can be aware of that energy as well. So what if you could be more at peace? I'm not saying you don't allow your emotions and your tears and whatever else, but what if you could be more at peace with that whole transition? And like Susie was saying, have that communication with an animal now, having these tools before you have to make any tough decisions, and know that the animal has choice too. And I think this is a major part that people don't even grasp, that animals have choices too. Animals make their own choice. So, yeah.
And sometimes those choices you don't necessarily understand or even agree with, And that can also sometimes really throw you for a loop, when an animal chooses to go at a time when maybe you weren't ready yourself, and the animal is leaving. I think a lot of times, people will experience that with cats. Cats can go outside and never come home. And then you might go into of course, the idea of, oh, did they get killed? Did they do this? Did they do that? But sometimes they literally just move out as well. And for us, sometimes that can be really where we make ourselves wrong. Well, why would my cat choose that? Why would my cat choose to move to someone else's house? And I actually one time had a really cool story with my own cat who did actually hang out with a neighbor and was sitting on his lap, which she was not a lap cat. She never sat on my lap. And I was like, she's sitting on the neighbor's lap. And so, I thought, oh, well, maybe she actually would rather live with this neighbor. And then there came a time when the neighbor was moving. And this was all within like a few months. And he was choosing to move. And he asked me if he could take the cat with him. And at that point, I really had to look at it, and that's when I really sat down and also with myself and with the cat had a conversation. And what I realized was the cat wasn't necessarily choosing him as a person to live with, but she had gone to visit him because he was actually suicidal, and the cat stopped him from committing suicide.
Wow.
And he actually told me that. And by the time he was moving, he said, look, I'm fine now, but this cat saved my life. And so I realized that, oh, she was being something for this man that she wasn't being for me. And at the same time, she also didn't desire to move with him. And that's what came up in the end. It's like, no, I don't want to move with him. And so I said to him, hey, look, I would like to not choose this. And he was totally fine with it. But, so you sometimes don't know what these animals are choosing or what their, what their lives are like, because we think, like if you said, that they don't have a choice or that they are ours, but no, they're not really ours. They are here with us. And yes, we are the steward of their lives in many ways. And if we were to really honor that, they also choose things that sometimes are without us really knowing why, but they might still choose them. And what if we actually were okay with that too, and really recognize that, oh yeah, truly, they can make choices.
It's funny, you just prompted a memory with some friends of mine. This is way before I knew about the tools of talk to the animals and access. And they had a Doberman that was right at the end of her life. And a very dear friend of ours was the dog's vet. And she said, look, you need to put her in the cage and give a cage rest and do this and do that for the next 3 weeks. And then, she might get better and she'll have a better quality of life for the last month or 2 months or whatever. Anyway, that weekend we'd all planned to go camping up the beach, and they brought the dog with them. And I remember being horrified, going, oh my God, they're going against what the vet suggested. And, I had a chat with the owner, and he said, look, we know how much she loves the beach. If she gets to come and be with us on this last camping trip and runs and plays with her friends and wants to be in the ocean and just wants to be with us for the weekend, and that shortens her life, he said, I would rather her have that quality of life than be locked in a cage and us, medicating her and her being miserable. And that really got me to look at things from a very different point of view. The vet wasn't wrong. The vet was offering a suggestion, and they made a different choice. And I just went, wow, they actually considered the dog and the quality of the life of the dog. And he said, look, she's going to die anyway. So why would I want her to spend the last 3 or 4 weeks of her life stuck in a cage miserable, rather than, look, she might come to the beach and be with us and drop dead, but she's doing what she loves the most. And I'm like, wow, that just really blew my mind at the time, and I can imagine for people maybe listening to this now that it might be a stretch for you, but it's just a different way to look at things. That's all. It's just being willing to have your mind open to perceive a different possibility. And there is never any right or wrong choice.
Yeah. And the one thing that I want to add to all of this conversation is, if you are facing a situation that is really a tough choice that you have to make, please stay present with the animal. And I think this is the part that we often start to really kind of avoid looking at what's going on, and we push it away and we don't really want to deal with it. Let someone else make the choice, the vet or another person, let me call someone else who can make the choice for me. But really, what if the animal and you could really be so present with each other that you knew what was required? And even if it is a choice also that you have to give an animal away, what if you weren't avoiding that conversation, but to really be present with it and explain to the animal what's going on in your life and why you are looking at this as a choice, and let the animal help you with that choice. Where does the animal desire to go? Let them help you find that next place for them. And what if you were just really present with it? And I think this is the part that the animals are going to be grateful for, no matter what, whether they are in the last, basically in the last time of their life with you, or whatever it might be. The animal is going to be so grateful if you are going to choose to be present with them, and it will make everything easier for you. We often think that this will make it harder for you, but it's actually not true. It will make it easier if you are not avoiding this conversation. And even if you say, I don't know how to talk to my animal, it's not true. You do know what it means to be present with your animal. And so please don't buy into the idea that you don't know how to communicate. Just, if you are willing to really be present with that animal, you are going to receive information. And just trust that that is the information that you're receiving. And when you're being present with it, then you also know if it's your head talking or if it's the animal giving you information, because your head has it's usually way too logical. Animals are not logical. So, if you're going into logic and why and this and that and then because of, that's usually not the animal talking. But if if you're just present with it, you will get information. Please, please, please know that, and give it a shot. Give it a shot.
Yeah, and just one last thing I'd love to add to, it's like, I remember Gary Douglas, the founder of Access Consciousness, and he's written the book Talk to the Animals. He talks about, to the animal, hey, thanking the animal, thank you for being such a great, like I was saying earlier, thank you for being such a great cat or a great horse or whatever. And it's like, and if you'd like to come back to me in another lifetime, you can choose another body and make it really obvious to me that it's you if you want to come back to me. And that's mind-blowing for people sometimes, I think, to realize that there is lifetime after lifetime after lifetime. So, that's another, and not from need, not from, oh, I'm missing Fluffy so much, I want him to come back, but from giving that animal the choice, hey, if you want to come back, come and find me, and it's such, not having that ownership and truly being a steward. These animals, we choose to have them in our care. We are their carer, their steward, not their owner. We don't own them at all. So, yeah, another great conversation. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Viv. And please stay tuned. We will be coming up with more of these topics, and hopefully you are enjoying this. And please, if you do enjoy, check out talktotheanimals.com. And there are intro classes, there are all sorts of things that you could dive in, where there is really no prerequisites, in the sense that you don't have to have any exposure to Access Consciousness prior to coming to these classes. So if these tools are intriguing, please check them out at talktotheanimals.com.
Thank you, Susie. And I will say auf Wiedersehen to you, and thank you to our watchers that we have, our audience. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next time.
Sounds great.